right, sound testing 1 2 3 1 2 3. Sound testing 1 2 3 1 2 3. Sound testing 1 2 3 1 2 3.
And here he is up here in the top right-hand side of Oxenlead in the blue. The Terran
Sound testing 1 2 3 1 2 3. This is just a test. This is just a test. Just seeing how I line up with the announcers. I'm gonna turn them down quite a bit. You guys can find all this on YouTube and enjoy it. Test 1 2 3 1 2 3. Katowice. I already forget how to pronounce it. Katowice. Katowice 2021. Maru vs Reynor. Katowice. Katowice 2021. Alright, guys. It is a big week. We got the Summer Masters in Sweden coming up. We still have some qualifiers for the sort of 32 wildcard spots. The main 16 are all upset mostly, except for the seeding. Of course, they still have to go through group rounds. And then 32 people who are chosen based on their world rank mostly, or their regional rank, play like elimination or die series of rounds, and then they have to play the top 16 who basically get a bye through all that. So that's starting to happen on Wednesday and Thursday, the 32, and then the round of 16 through the finals, I believe, is Friday, Saturday, Sunday, in some city in Sweden, which is even less pronounceable than Katowice, Poland, which is, or which has always been a great bastion of Starcraft 2, and the spot for tournaments. But ever since they stopped having BlizzCon, the Blizzard Comic-Con, the combination of COVID and problems at Activision/Blizzard, we won't go there. They decided under the aegis of IEM to do the finals in the middle of winter in Poland. I guess that's a good idea if they're not covered in snow and frozen to death. But it's a really cool modern city, and they do a great job with the finals. So we're actually going to rewind this in a second. I have 2 or 3 epic battles between these two. And I would do it anyways because I love watching both of these guys, not just against each other, but against all the big stars. But of the opening group stage that we know about for the top 16 on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the ones who are already seeded and set, by far the most exciting is a best of 3 between Maru and Reynor here. At first I thought it was already elimination, and I was like, oh man, they should be in different brackets, because I don't want them to eliminate each other, because it's a great quarterfinals, semifinals, or definitely finals. And here we're watching the semifinals from Katowice 2021, what used to be the WCS World Championship Series. Now IEM Katowice. Spoiler alert, Reynor will win this epic bout and go on to win as like an 18-year-old after he's been winning global tournaments since he's 16. Both of these two guys have been stars since they were little kids, basically. And as soon as they turn 16, well, Maru's 25 and Reynor is 20, I believe. As soon as they turn 16, Maru in Korea and Reynor's from Italy, part of the European group. Korea is, of course, their own group. They not only started playing, but immediately started winning global tournaments. And the only reason Maru is more heavily decorated than Reynor overall is because the Korean 3 times a year major tournaments that they call Global Starcraft Tournament or Global Starcraft League, which is as big of a deal as any of the actual global tournaments because of how big and important Starcraft 2 is in Korea. And Maru is starting in 2018, won all 3 of those GSLs in Korea, and then again the very next one at the beginning of 2019, so 4 in a row, and then he didn't win for a while, and he's had some trouble globally winning offline in in-person events. He's won online tournaments that are still considered major or even premier events, but he hasn't won a major offline in-person live event outside of Korea. But in Korea, he's dominating, and after my boy Hero, who had an unbelievable 2022 and reestablished himself as not only the best, but by far the most innovative and copied Protoss player in the world, won the second of 3 of those GSLs, those Korean global tournaments, in 2022. And then the final one in 2022, Maru won, establishing his 5th win, which was a big deal for some reason. 5 wins is like the big thing. No one's ever done it. And then he won it again at the beginning of this year. They've only had 1 of the 3 in Korea. The second one's in July, and the third is in the fall or something. So now he has 6. No one else has more than 4 ever in the history of Korea. He's only 25, and he's completely restructured his game as he's matured and gotten older. And it's very scary now that Maru is back and maybe better than ever. And he just has to win one of these live in-person tournaments. And so I'm kind of rooting for him because I don't even know if my guy Hero is going to even be there. He might play his way in. But while I'm a big Reynor fan, I'm a Clem fan, obviously Scarlet, and a bunch of the Koreans. I love watching the Korean events. I know it's not for everybody, but it's like an art form there, the national sports. And so watching, especially when you know the great players there, including Dark, who beat both Hero and Maru to win the 2022 Katowice, how do I pronounce it? Katowice, beat Hero in the semis and then Maru in the finals. Both heartbreaking losses, but Dark is not only the greatest living, most decorated Zerg player from Korea, and only Reynor here and Cyril from Finland can, claim to be maybe as good or better Zerg players. But Dark is one of those guys who's just got crazy in his eyes and will just go literally years. Like there was a 5-year streak from like 2014 to 2019 where he was just winning literally everything in and outside of Korea, and is still a huge threat and will be there again this year as a Zerg player. And both he and Reynor here are 2 Zerg players, along with Cyril, who in the second match I'm going to cover, which is the quarterfinals of Valencia 2022 Summer Masters between these 2, where Maru did win. Oh no, that's the one where Dark ended up beating him after he beat Reynor. There was another summer offline tournament in 2022 where Maru and Reynor were both eliminated by Cyril, who's the Zerg mega superstar from Finland, who's widely considered maybe the best Zerg player in the world. As I said, Dark from Korea and Reynor here can claim to be maybe as skilled, and maybe we'll get there, especially Reynor. Dark doesn't really have to do any more to prove it, and is older than Cyril. But Cyril with a 70% win percentage, which is just totally ridiculous. It's actually over 70%. He just beats everyone. Terran, Zerg, Protoss, does not matter. And Reynor almost beat him in the... let's see, which... I have this on my phone. Sorry, guys. Trying to keep track of all this. So, right. So, Katowice... Oh, no, I was right. Katowice... I still can't pronounce it. Katowice 2022, which is the year after this one, which is where Reynor actually eliminated Dark in the quarterfinals. Maru lost to Serral in the quarterfinals, and then Serral would go on to play Reynor in the finals. Reynor, I just rewatched that one. It's great. Reynor went up 3-1, I think, against Serral, or at least 2-1, and they ended up going the full 7 games in the final, but Serral, of course, won in the end with his experience and so forth. But the year before, which is right here, which we're about to rewind and start from the beginning, Reynor would win this epic match, and in this is the semis, and then go on to the finals and beat... Who did Reynor beat? Zest, who isn't super big at the moment, but just below Hero, and is also very wacky and unpredictable at Korean Protoss player. Korean Protoss players are very crazy and unpredictable, whereas North American and European Protoss players tend to be more by the book, defensive, planned out, and so forth. Not Hero and not Zest. And Reynor would go on to beat Zest in this tournament 4-2 after beating Maru here. This is an epic series, but the second one I'm going to do between these two guys, which is, hold on one sec, which is the 2022 Valencia Summer Masters, one of the 3. So, as I said, Korea has 3 giant, what they call global tournaments, which actually non-Koreans can compete in if they play in online Korean tournaments during the year. And score enough points. Serral's done it. Scarlet's done it. I mean, Scarlet lived in Korea. None of them have won it, but they can definitely compete with them, the best non-Korean players. So anyways, 3 big ones in Korea, and then 3 actual global ones. There's a summer one, which is changing locations. There's a fall one, which has been in Atlanta the last few years, and is going to be this fall as well. And my boy Hero, during his amazing streak last year, won in Atlanta after winning the GSL Korean title in the summer. And it's in Atlanta again this fall, and then again in February in the middle of Poland. Katowice will host what used to be called the World Championship Series, which is the big one. All 3 of the global ones and a bunch of offline and online throughout the year can be considered major or even premier events. But the ESL Summer Masters, Fall Masters, and then the IEM global title in Katowice in early winter of whatever's the following year. Which ends the season technically and is the big event, is considered the big one. So there's the intro. So because Maru and Reynor are playing the first round, and of all the first round group matches that we are aware of, is by far the most exciting. And you just hope that whoever wins that one does well in the group, and wins out the rest of their series, besides just the 2 them playing each other. Like, when they're not playing each other, because one of them has to win, have them win both, and then both of them can move on into the final 16, because you've got 32 play-ins, 16 who are already seeded. It's very confusing. So there's 48 people that start, but the real tournament starts in the final 16 after all that's whittled down from the original 32 plus 16, with all the various single and double elimination rounds. And so we can just hope that both Maru and Reynor make it into that, because the top 2 in each group do get to go. But they have to do well against other of the top 16 that are in their group, and then they have to do single elimination wins against the play-in 32, who make it far enough to play the top 16, of which these two are both part of it. So you can see everything blowing up all over the place here, and 15 minutes into this best of 5 first match between them, just watching visually as I give you the intro there, it gives you a sense of how epic it is. But I was going to say well, these games go long and the series is long, and would test my endurance, except I did a whole bunch of Hero, Maru, and other Hero, and some Oliveira and Reynor. I'm going to do more Oliveira because he's a super exciting player from China who's been good for a while, but broke out winning Katowice 2023 just earlier this year. And has been since then just totally on fire, and it's great for the game having a great Chinese player, obviously, for all the obvious reasons and some less obvious reasons. So I have some practice with this. But the second video I'm doing after this, which is a best of 5, which is the quarterfinals from Valencia, the Summer Masters 2022 from last year. So what's about to happen in Sweden is the Summer Masters. So almost exactly a year ago, these two played in the quarterfinals of that Summer Masters, which was in Valencia last year. It's in Sweden this year. And Maru would go on to beat Reynor in that, in super ridiculously epic, long games. Like, I might have to split up the video, they're so long. And then that was the quarterfinals, I believe. Also in the quarterfinals, Hero beat Clem, which was also a great match. I'll have to do, which I did do as part of my video about just Hero's artistry. I didn't cover the games that closely. So in the quarterfinals of Valencia Summer last year, almost exactly a year ago, in the quarterfinals, Hero beat Clem, Maru beat Reynor, but then Hero had to play Dark in the semis and lost a heartbreaking 3-2 to Dark. Maru beat Creator, another great Korean player. And then Maru played Dark in the finals and barely lost 4-3 in the full 7 out of 7 game series. So both my guy Hero and Maru, who I've started to really love too for very different reasons than Hero. It's like Hero's sort of like Steph Curry, and Mario's like LeBron James. Like, Hero is just so lovable and nice and sweet, and the ultimate mensch, and you just want to root for him, especially with this crazy, unpredictable, fun play style. Never has a boring game. Maru is just that effortlessly dominant player who generally only loses when he makes mistakes and isn't totally focused, which tends to happen, again, live, in person, offline, outside of Korea. When he's playing in Korea, no matter how big the tournament, or when he's playing online from Korea, playing anyone in the world, he's totally dominant. Had some problems playing live. Now, as you can see here, and then I can't believe this game is still going on. This is still game 1. But we have to cover it. We have to cover it. Quick side note, I'm not going to put the desktop audio too much louder than this, because it does get distracting, but I do want to have some sound so you can hear when they get excited, the casters and some of the sound effects. But also because if you like what you see in terms of the actual gameplay, just search it. It's so easy to find on YouTube. It has they all have tens of thousands of hits. Just type in Maru Reynor 2021 or Maru Reynor 2022, and you can watch it yourself. And if you use ad blockers, you don't even have to watch it with ads on YouTube. But I'm only partially watching this as I slog through my intro here. And it's just unbelievable the amount of carnage and excitement already in this first round. These two, it just Terran and Zerg. I mean, Terran versus Terran is classic. It's just human armies from the future fighting each other. But in terms of two different races, it's even though I'm personally a Protoss guy and I like Protoss versus Zerg and Protoss versus Terran when it's the right players, mainly Hero, also Showtime, Neeb, the great Protoss players. But in general, sort of the most classic because it's like Starship Troopers and so much sci-fi, but also because they are truly different races and how they function in every way is Terran versus Zerg. And so when you get long, epic Terran versus Zerg matches, they tend to be high action, as epic and long as they are. And it's just ginormously fun. And these two in general, I don't know if they consider each other rivals at this point, but they've had 3 or 4 at least major matches against each other in the last couple of years, and they're all epic. Even the best of 3s and group stages that they play are epic. Most of their games are over 20 minutes. But again, I'm going to keep the volume level not too loud. You get a little sense of it and talk about... let me put it this way. I'm not going to try and also do the commentating that these great broadcasters, and they do have great broadcasters for the StarCraft stuff, always have and still do. You should just go watch it. I'm going to talk about bigger picture stuff. And again, my Nerd Templar Academy, as I'm calling it, is aimed also to the casual gamer, or at least the casual StarCraft gamer, who might not know a ton about StarCraft esports or esports in general, explain some of the dynamics and the strategies and so forth. This will give me plenty of time to do so. So, as I'm just listening to the sound in my ears here myself and what's going on. Going to wind this back to the beginning, start over again. Actually, it might not be necessary. We're already 22 minutes into the first one. You can sort of see what's in the background. I'm going to do this as a part 1. We'll, let me put on my other earphones to hear what is being heard on a little bit more from the broadcasters, because it's even hard for me to follow, especially while I'm trying to broadcast or podcast, whatever, vidcast while it's going on. So here we are, 23 minutes, 30 seconds at the first of 5, and they've been maxed out forever. I mean, the thing is, when Maru plays Hero, a couple of the games will go long, but a couple of the games will be Hero winning in like 3 minutes. When Maru and Reynor, when they play the best players in the world, generally, especially when it's Terran versus Terran for Maru or Terran versus Zerg, and for Reynor, reversed, when he's playing Zerg or he's Zerg and he's playing a Terran, the Terran Zerg matches involving these two, or the mirror matches, well, Maru got the first right there, tend to go very, very epically, and are all very worth watching, including mirror matches of Reynor, Zerg with Cyril, and of course Maru with tons of great Terran players from Korea. This is just a generalization, but at the moment, other than maybe Dark, whose best years maybe past him, although he did win Katowice last year, or Valencia, I should say, over Maru, as previously mentioned. He's a great, but there's a ton of great Zerg players in Europe. Clem from France, who's also a youngin' like Reynor, is a very, very good and already highly decorated Terran player from Europe, with a very unique playstyle. But most of the great Terran players right now are coming from Korea, and have been for a while. And most of the great Koreans, like of the top 10 Koreans who are all amazing players, many of them are Terrans. And so, unsurprisingly, when you combine a spike at Terrans among the best Koreans and around the world, there are a ton of Terran players already in the top 16, and we'll see what happens with the 32 who are trying to play their way in. But in general, Terran's dominating now. Protoss is usually at the bottom just because of how it's structured. They're expensive. I talk about this all the time as a Protoss guy. We won't talk about this too much here. And the Zerg have also been extremely dominant in both the original StarCraft and Brood War and in StarCraft 2. They're constantly balancing, rebalancing the game. There was a giant patch earlier this year. And since then, it seems that Terrans have the have the advantage. So I'm gonna just pause for a sec here. That's a pretty funny picture of the two of them. Let me put something a little bit more. There we go. I mean, this is funny too, but at least they're posing. Yeah. So that's the game plan. So we just already did the first of 5 games. As I did my intro to a bunch of videos. And by the way, I'm doing these 2 or 3 giant Maru Reynor matches, or series, I should say, from the past few years at global events because they're playing in the one of the first games that's being played in the group stage of the top 16 are these 2. It's definitely going to be the best, most exciting, should be by all measures, most exciting and coolest, an epic group stage matchup. But I also am going to do some more hero because he's my guy. I want to do some Clem because, like, Reynor, there's 20. They're the same age. They're friends. And being a great Terran European player is somewhat unusual. And he's also excellent and always has a shot. And I'm going to do some more Koreans as well because I love watching the Koreans. And I'm going to cover some of the GSL events. And at some point, I'm going to do all 4 of Maru's wins in 2018, 2019 when he won 4 straight GSLs when he was just coming into domination in Korea. And I also have to do Hero beating Maru and just Hero winning the GSL, the second one last year. And then, of course, as I said, the last 3 I won by Hero, Maru, and then Maru again at the beginning of this game. So I want to cover all those because everything involving Hero and or Maru, together or separately, in the Korean events is just awesome. And the Korean events are so over the top. I mean, it's like football, big football games or any football games, you know, with the I mean, they don't have fighter jets and fireworks because they're inside, but like these pre-produced sort of interview player card music video montages and these like hilarious teeny bopper emo photos and so forth. It's just, I mean, let's put it this way. A lot of those GSL events in Korea are also long and epic when the best players are playing each other, but the actual like file goes like 3 hours because the beginning, between the games, and then at the end, of course, with the trophy and crowning the winner, are so over the top and extended, where they interview the players constantly or trying to get them to talk trash with each other, even though they're mostly friends in real life. Anyways, it's great. And I'm mostly just going to cover the games of those, obviously, but I'll direct you when I do get around to the GSL events to watch them because the Koreans playing each other in Korea is just a whole different thing. It's definitely an art form as well as the national sport. And it's really fun to just watch the entire event. You know, most of these stuff I just skip to the games, even the big global events. But in Korea, you sort of have to watch it because it's so corny and overly produced, that I'll show a little bit of it and then we'll get into those games. But for now, we've got Maru versus Reynor. Maru just won game 1 in 5-game series from IEM Katowice, Poland, 2021? Yeah, 21. And then the second video, or group of videos, because these games are so long, and I like to stop and pause and do analysis and so forth, replay, etc. I've been breaking up the longer ones into multiple videos, for obvious reasons, and for myself to take a break. I'm already getting hoarse here, and I have a bit of a cold as well, so a bit of a scratchy voice and stuffed up nose, and so forth. And so I'll be taking some breaks. So we're gonna do those two first, and then I'm definitely gonna do. I mean, almost for sure after these two Reynor Maru series, I have to do Oliveira from China, who used to be called Time. It sort of came out of nowhere. I mean, he's gotten far in some tournaments, but to win Katowice, which is the biggest global tournament, even for the Koreans, but certainly for the rest of the world, just this past midwinter in February or so in Poland, with a very difficult slate, including Oliveira coming back from 2-0 to beat this guy Reynor. Where's Reynor? Reynor? Over here. Down 2-0 to Reynor, came back 1-3-2. He went down 1-0 or 2-0 versus my guy Hero. I think he just went down 1-0 and then won 3 straight. It was actually one of the bigger whoopings. But even more impressive because Hero can just be over the top and just his crazy plans go awry. You know, he's going to slaughter people sometimes, and other times he's going to get slaughtered. That's just par for the territory when you're talking about someone who is outside the box as Hero, which is that his highs are like 2022, where he wins everything in Korea and around the world on and offline, and resets the entire meta of Protoss and in general for Starcrafts. And I did a whole video that you guys should check out on Twitch or YouTube, comparing Reynor to like jazz musicians and dancers and so forth in terms of improvisations and creativity, etc., etc. So yeah. So anyway. So so this is the 2021 Katowice Super Bowl of Starcraft. In the 2023 one, which just happened this past midwinter in Katowice, Maru, like I said, beat Reynor in the quarterfinals, came back against Hero, my guy, in the semis to whoop him, and then whooped Maru pretty hard in the finals. And when I do get to it, because I'm going to definitely do the one against Hero and the one against Maru with Oliveira beating them in his big comebacks after I do these two Maru Reynor videos. The broadcasters talk about how after a few wins against Maru in the finals, we have Terran versus Terran, and Maru's playing Oliveira, who he knew as Time and was a decent player, did not expect to be playing in the finals, especially a mirror match against a non-Korean Terran player, and then to get so whooped in the first few games. The broadcasters were like, man, Oliveira has just broken Maru. It wasn't broken like he was crying and like depressed and upset. He was laughing at himself at one point, even while there were games left, and you could just tell Oliveira was just going to keep winning. He just was on that crazy streak. So I didn't do the quarterfinals against Reynor with Oliveira, where Ollie came back 2-0 to win 3-2. I've done part of it, and then I've done another part of it as part of another video. I didn't do the whole series, and I'm not going to go back and do it again, partially because I've done at least half of it in different videos I've done, but also because the announcing by Ravi and Zombie Grub, especially ZG Zombie Grub, is because Ollie's comeback was so spectacular with just in that series, in the momentum shift in the series and in the whole tournament. You could just see it was changing as Oliveira's confidence and boldness positive cockiness would grow, celebrating more and more after every win. Was not just fun to watch, but you could just smell the momentum growing on him, so that when he beat the historically legendary living playing legends like Hero and Maru after that, it wasn't even that surprising, because he was just went from the underdog to just pure domination. So I'm not going to go back and do those, but I will do Oliveira versus Hero, who I hope was able to play his way in the 32. But again, with Hero, his variance is so great, and he didn't get one of the 6 reserve spots. And after having such a great year last year, and he's already 30, and he said he's not going to play that much longer after having served in the Army, coming back, playing so much, doing so well. So I don't even know how much longer Hero's going to play, which is sad, but he's had an amazing career. I mean, he was winning IEM 3 years straight global events back in 2012, 2013, 2014. Then he went to the Army, then he came back, and then changed the entire metagame of StarCraft, especially Protoss. And then, of course, the finals from Katowice from this past February between Maru and Oliveira, where Oliveira breaks Maru and goes on to win he's the reigning national champion is Maru. And while this weekend's tournament in Sweden and the fall one in Atlanta are ESL Global Masters, they're considered premier tournaments, the premier of the premier tournaments, just below Katowice. To be the world champion, like the world champion of boxing, you hold the title for a year, it's in Katowice. So Maru has to hopefully win one of those, at least one that's coming up this weekend, and or Atlanta, and or Katowice early next year, to finally just have the monkey off his back, as they say, about not being able to win live global events outside of Korea. He's going to do it eventually, and then he'll probably win 10 of them, so I'm not worried. It'll be exciting to watch. And so I'll do that one with Ali versus Hero and Ali versus Maru. And then we'll see. Serral's always a threat. Clem is always a threat from Europe. And then you've got Dark, Byun, all these classic Korean players who've been playing 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. Scarlet, who's now been around forever from Canada, and some others who are more youngins, or at least are making their way up the ladder at various points in their career. So I might cover some of those events. I've already done Scarlet. Scarlet was the first one I did against Bomber, because it's my online buddy from Asia, and a StarCraft playing partner and strategy advisor, Judas, was like, if you're going to start doing casting or just, covering and analysis, you got to do Scarlet versus Bomber, where Scarlet beat Serral and then 2 of the greatest Korean players in Korea when IEM was in Pyongyang in 2018 as like an extension of the 2018 Olympics, I believe. It was an IEM Global Championship. It was also like a showcase, semi-official, semi-unofficial Olympic event. So anyways, in person in Korea, Scarlet beat the Koreans in Korea to win it. And it's unbelievable. But her match against Bomber was from an earlier tournament. And that was the first one I did and got me really into this. And I realized my podcasting skills could hopefully transfer into doing esports, because I do love sports and always have, and I can talk to myself and my computer and to you guys forever, especially when I can stop the videos and do analysis and talk philosophy and music and art and creativity and global politics and business politics and so forth. And so covering esports is a very easy transition, and I'm getting lots of hits on YouTube. I mean, I've had more hits on YouTube in the last month because of this stuff than I have literally in years. I have hundreds of videos on YouTube from all sorts of streams I've done, because I just upload everything decent I do on Twitch, including 30 Ghost of Tsushima videos, 40 Horizon videos, Witcher videos, Stellaris, Life is Strange. You can check out my YouTube channel. I'll put it here or in the copy or something on YouTube. It's just YouTube at SlipKid7. But I've had more views in the last month and a half covering the stuff than everything I've done before on YouTube. mostly I put it on YouTube just for posterity and for myself in the past, but now it's like, oh, I'm getting to the point where I can be affiliate and hopefully I'm very close to becoming a Twitch affiliate. So tell your friends. I'm only a few subscribers away and a few conversations between a bunch of people on my channel. I'm close to reaching affiliate status on Twitch, which isn't that hard, but it is the first step on monetization and working towards becoming a full partner. But more so, you guys watching on YouTube has been awesome, and I very much appreciate it, and it's been super fun. So anyways, moving from podcaster, as I relaunched the Bizzlecast brand, Bizzlecast is my podcast, hundreds of podcasts I did from 2015 through 2020, 2021. I still occasionally do audio podcasts. I started working in video, and then COVID happened and other stuff, and I just sort of took an extended break, and now I'm back and doing mostly video content. It's not just going to be esports, although I do love covering Starcraft and happen to jump in during the lead up to a major tournament, and we'll continue doing it, but related games and non-video game stuff as well, including interviews with people who work for NASA or human rights organizations, or who are district attorneys, and talking politics and international relations and the environment, etc., all sorts of stuff. But right now we're doing Starcraft, ESL/IEM esports, global competition, which, even though it's not official and the bureaucracy is taking forever, and I understand people's hesitation, since Microsoft announced that they were going to buy, or wanted to buy, Activision/Blizzard, even though it hasn't gone through yet, and there's been some roadblocks, just the announcement completely rejuvenated, I can't stress this enough, completely rejuvenated the StarCraft scene, because Microsoft is just doing great. I mean, not only have they made Windows from decades of crap into arguably as good or maybe better than Mac OS X, which I never saw coming, and led to what's going on right here on your screen, Twitch. I mean, being able to Twitch at 1080, 60 frames per second, let alone 4K or whatever that people are doing, not be possible without PCs being affordable, relatively affordable to build these days, if you know what you're doing, relatively powerful for what you pay for, and just easy to stream, and mostly very reliable. Of course, lag does occasionally happen, especially when these events are offline. They do hard lines when they're in person, but for the most part. But then when you add Microsoft's success, not necessarily with the Xbox itself, which never sells as much, at least in the last few generations, Xboxes have sold way less than the PS4 and PS5, but Xbox Game Pass, and the integration of Xbox games and PC games, where you can play video games on PC via their Game Pass and vice versa, as well as their continued improvement and development of both indie and AAA studios and games, and not just stuff like Halo, but like, the new Age of Empires, which is the other great legendary real-time strategy franchise. I mean, it's Command and Conquer back in the day, but what's been going on since the 90s and continues to be great today is StarCraft 1 and 2 and all the associated campaigns and DLC, for the last 25, 26 years, and during the same period, 4 Age of Empires games. Bottom line is, Microsoft knows how to do real-time strategy. They love doing real-time strategy. They just proved that they could do it again with a very good, not perfect or amazing, but very, very good Age of Empires 4. Phil Spencer, the head of Microsoft, has specifically said part of the reason they want to buy Activision, not just for Blizzard, and you get Diablo, which just released Diablo 4, and of course World of Warcraft, but specifically because he loves, and they all love, StarCraft, being real-time strategy people. And so just the announcement and the intention from Microsoft to get a hold of Blizzard, despite monopoly issues or whatever, which, are something we need to be concerned about or at least pay attention to. But Activision and Blizzard are so dysfunctional. The number of sexual abuse, suicides, I mean, really terrible stuff. Because of the just terrible corporate culture at Activision Blizzard the past few years, is really, really dirty and gross. And those of us who are super fans of StarCraft to have continued to play it and support the tournaments and so forth is just because of our love of the game. It doesn't mean we don't know about and aren't concerned by what goes on at Blizzard. But Microsoft, say what you will, they're not always the greatest innovators, they're not always the greatest programmers, and they sometimes overreach. The biggest example being that Bill Gates was a great businessman, but he was never the visionary that Steve Jobs was. But Microsoft has just been getting better and better in the games sphere, but mostly has a very healthy and I think very employee-friendly corporate culture compared to most of the tech companies. Not to mention, one of the biggest donors to humanitarian causes on the planet, not just Bill Gates with his private funds, but Microsoft itself, and will immediately straighten out. They'll fire all the horrible, mostly probably older white men who run Activision and Blizzard, promote the people who should be promoted to run the company, and just get rid of the disgusting anti-woman, anti-majority, anti-minority, anti-whatever else is going on there, terrible corporate practices at Activision Blizzard, put them back on the right track, and then hopefully won't meddle too much and we'll let the creative people who don't deserve to be fired very much deserve to keep making this stuff, these great games, these great franchises, and hopefully make them better. And for us, StarCraft 3, let's just put it this way. For the last few years, StarCraft 3 seemed not only unlikely, but impossible. And just since the beginning of the year with the Microsoft announcement, it seems, assuming it goes through, seems not only likely, but likely to happen in the relative near future, because World of Warcraft gets a new DLC every year. So it never really changes other than just adding content, as MMOs do, massively multiplayer online games. And Diablo just released Diablo 4, which was their first major Diablo release since 2012 with Diablo 3. So the other major Blizzard title is, of course, StarCraft. And with the success of Age of Empires 4, but I'm sure they would like to even do better. The real-time strategy team at Age of Empires and the people who do Halo Wars, and they just do great RTS at Microsoft, I'm sure are chomping at the bit to get their hands on the StarCraft franchise, which, as I've said before, is such a transcendent game. Just as a game, single player, multiplayer, both, either or both, but also has unbelievable story and characters and world building that it has no place doing as a strategy game, and doesn't even need. Even if it had just so-so characters and so-so story, it would still be an amazing game and the best real-time strategy franchise. But you add Reynor and Kerrigan and Artanis and Zeratul and Tassadar and Tychus and Mengsk, and Junior Mengsk, Valerian, just unbelievable characters and storytelling in the single-player campaign, and they put it in the co-op, and co-op will certainly be expanded, and so I'll stop babbling here because we gotta get back to Maru versus Reynor after I take a short break after the intro to the coverage I'm going to be doing throughout the week, hopefully, if I can, but certainly over the next couple days, of major matches of players who are in the tournament, the global ESL Masters tournament this weekend in Sweden. Like these two gentlemen, Maru and Reynor, but it's just viewership is way up over the last couple of years. Excitement is up, enthusiasm is up. We've got young players finally. It was mostly aging Korean players, but now we've got Reynor from Italy, 20 years old. We've got Clem from France, 20 years old. We've got Cyril, who's a little bit older, but is a dominant Zerg player, one of the best ever StarCraft players from Finland. We've got Oliveira from China, finally a excellent and hopefully dominant for many years Chinese player. So there's 1.5 billion Chinese. Just think about this. If only 0.1% of Chinese people, so let's say they have 1.5 billion people, right? So let's see. So 1% would be 1.5 million. So 0.1% would be 150,000. Okay, so say 1%, say 0.5% to 1% of the entire Chinese population is even mildly into things like StarCraft, and that Oliveira gets them excited enough to get into it more, especially with their political and cultural rivalry with countries like Korea. I won't get into the politics, but it's pretty obvious. It's just a great rivalry waiting to happen. And Coffee is another Chinese player who made it into the top 16 in the tournament, but Oliveira is the big star, and he's like Reynor here, is extremely emotive and not afraid to be a little cocky and excited and celebrate his wins, but is a sweetheart when you hear him interviewed, and is friends with a lot of the players. But when he's competing, he gets into it, and he's flowing and listening to music and getting down like Reynor does. Reynor and Oliveira, just their personalities are definitely the most exciting players. And so, again, if he could just get a tiny fraction of Chinese people excited about StarCraft, Oliveira will have done a great service to esports, but especially StarCraft esports. So, we just saw this funny picture. Why don't we just go to the end here? All right, so here it is at 22 minutes. They're both mostly maxed out. And by the way, after that long intro and this just seeing the end of game 1, I'm going to take a break and then come back and do games 2 through 5. But you can see that they're both basically maxed out in terms of their supply. Maru has a much bigger army. Reynor has a ton more workers, which Zerg generally do have way more workers. Because they need those minerals to do all the things that they do. But at this point in the game, 23 minutes in the late game, you want a big army. Maru has 142 of his 200 supply as army, whereas only half of Reynor's 200 maxed out supply is army. You want big, powerful armies at this point in the game. It's been this way for the last few minutes if you go back and rewind or watch the video on YouTube, but it's just a matter of time. You can see Reynor just getting slaughtered here. These Vikings are taking out anything in the air. Tons of medevacs keeping, Maru is called Maru because he loves Marauders and has made Marauders from crappy units to like almost elite Terran units. He's talking about changing the meta. It's not just hero, it's also Maru with the Terrans, and there he goes. I mean, if you look, Reynor still had 129 supply and tons of bases, but, for many, many minutes leading up to that, Maru's army was growing, and Reynor's just wasn't. And so the first of 5, Reynor just says, let's call it, and I'll come back. And you'll have to stay tuned to see what happens in this match. Again, this is as you can see at the top there, the semifinals of the biggest of all the global events, the Super Bowl, the World Championship, whatever you want to call it, IEM Katowice in Poland. Cold, freezing, mid-February Poland every year is the big one. It's the one where you get to be called the world champ for a whole year, which Oliveira from China is at the moment. But this is 2021, which is where Reynor ended up going all the way after winning this very exciting semifinals against Maru that goes the distance, I believe. Yeah. And then didn't have too much trouble with Protoss player who's equally crazy but not nearly as brilliant as Hero, even though he's fun to watch, Zest, Protoss player. Reynor didn't have too much problem with Zest in the best of 7 in the finals after this. But it's not surprised because to get to that point, he had to beat Stats, who's a legendary Protoss player from Korea, who is somewhat old like Hero, but also like Hero is coming back in terms of his career, which is great. And then the quarterfinals, Reynor had to beat Dark, who, as previously mentioned, is, along with Maru, the most dominant Korean player ever. And at any point can just go on a run and win tons of games and tournaments. Then Reynor had to beat Maru in this epic one, which we're covering. So by the time he got to Zest, who's a very, very, very good, but not spectacular Protoss player, between Reynor's skill and his momentum, Reynor doesn't have too much problem in the final. So this is really in terms of competitiveness and epicness, this is kind of Reynor's finals. but he would go on to actually complete the finals by beating Zest, as previously mentioned, to win the global tournament in 2021. And then in 2022, in the quarterfinals, Maru, and then in the semifinals, in the quarterfinals, Maru was beaten by living legendary Zerg player Serral, one of the best players in the world, one of the best Zerg players in the world, if not the best, other than maybe Reynor and Dark and a couple Koreans. Maru was taken down by Serral in the quarterfinals in the 2022 IEM Katowice global title, and then Reynor actually played a really epic after Reynor. Did he beat Dark again? So 1 year later in the quarterfinals, Reynor plays Dark again and beats him again, playing perennially very good European Terran player Hero Marine, who is one of those guys that wins tons of games and small to medium and even big tournaments, but the biggest ones, while he can go far, he gets to the semifinals of Katowice from 2022, got to the semifinals, but Reynor beat him, and Serral, who in the semifinals beat another Korean legend, Rogue, who Maru has had a very big back and forth with competitive relationship for many years in Korea. So it ends up being Serral and Reynor in the finals, and Reynor is this close to winning 2 global titles in a row. But Serral ends up pulling it out in an extremely exciting Zerg vs. Zerg, which normally I hate Zerg vs. Zerg. I mean, the Zerg in general just grossed me out with the sound effects, but they're so fun to watch, and the players, when they're creative, are really fun to watch. So as Zerg vs. Zerg goes, watch the Reynor Serral Grand Finals of Katowice 2022, which I just rewatched. And then, of course, Oliveira, once again from China, won this past Midwinter's Global Finals in Katowice, and we'll have to see who wins early 2024 to become the next world champion. If it's not going to be Hero, which seems unlikely, although with Hero, who knows, he can always go on a run like he did last year and just win everything. So can Maru, and Maru is more than due for winning one of the major global titles. So maybe it'll be Sweden this weekend, maybe it'll be Atlanta in the fall, maybe it'll be Katowice early next year, which is the Super Bowl of StarCraft, or maybe he'll win all of them. But I'm definitely pulling for Maru because, like when LeBron wasn't, to make the LeBron comparison again, like when LeBron was, getting to the finals every year but not winning it, and you hear all the talk about, how can he be so great if he hasn't won a title, blah, 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 even though he's clearly the best player in the league. Once he finally won that title and then won a couple titles and then went back and so forth, that talk could stop. And Maru is very much the same way. It's a little disrespectful towards the Koreans because if you watch the level of competition, the 3, what they call global event, the 3 giant championships per year in Korea, called GSLs, of which Maru's won 6. No one else has even won more than 4. Maru's won 6, including the most recent 2. And he won 4 in a row when he was young in 2018, 2019. Now he's got 6. And he's the reigning champion of the last 2 GSL in Korea. I mean, he owns Korea. I mean, you get him to the semifinals and finals and the major Korean events with Maru, just forget about it. He's so comfortable there. But even if I didn't I originally thought I wasn't going to like Maru, and then we're really going to take a quick break. I originally wasn't going to like Maru, partially because I was, falling in love with Hero, and I thought they were like, real rivals. But once I realized that Maru's like very serious face and almost cockiness in the interviews was just a front, and he's just having fun. And you see him even when he loses, like when he lost to Hero in the global, the second of 3 of the major championships in Korea last year, the GSLs, when Hero beat Maru relatively easily. You see them, they try and get them talking trash and and so forth against each other. But when it's over in Hero 1, immediately they went over and, did the bro hug and Maru, you could see, was so frustrated because Hero just owns him and it starts like fake choking him and they're laughing. And you see that the Koreans, while they're extremely competitive with each other when they play, most of them, other than a couple crazy ones like Dark, are actually friends or at least friendly. And it's one thing that's great about Starcraft is there's really tight competition. Stakes are super high. Sometimes the money is big or just the glory. And so forth. It's the first major esport on the planet. It started modern esports. It's been around 26 years. It's still alive. And now it's reborn. Once we finish the Microsoft deal, we're going to get another Starcraft. But even Starcraft 2, with almost no support from their actual company, is now 11 years. No. Wait, 2010 was Wings of Liberty. 13 years plus into its life, after 3.5 campaigns, four campaigns and tons of just patches and DLCs, is still going and is now rebooted and better than ever with excitement for the future. It's just an amazing thing, especially when you're my age and you grew up in the late 90s playing the original Starcraft and Brood War, which blew my mind. Has always been my favorite game. And when I played Wings of Liberty in 2010, when it came out on my Mac laptop on so-so graphic settings, loved it. And then I was in grad school, and then I came back when Legacy of the Void, the Protoss campaign, came out. Played Heart of the Swarm, which is the Zerg, and then the Protoss campaign, Legacy of the Void, and I played Nova. Covert Ops, which is, I think, a great 9-mission mini campaign. She's the commander I use in co-op and my favorite character to play. The content, has kept coming for the most part and been great. But even the last few years, there has been a ton of new content, although that looks to change now that Microsoft is going to hopefully rejigger things in the company and get production going again. Just because fans love the game so much, and because it's such a complex and exciting game, and everything else is shooters out there. It's Call of Duty, it's Fortnite, it's CS:GO, it's Overwatch, blah 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 blah. But the original one, and even though it's a little fringe compared to those other ones at the moment, because it's just coming out of a dip in popularity, the brainiest of the major esports, and the first one in the original to really make esports is StarCraft, and now StarCraft 2. It's a really impressive thing. I'm so happy it's back, and that I'm getting back into the podcasting and video casting business, as it were. Right when the dip has ended, and we are now going up into the future with my favorite game franchise of all time, StarCraft. So thank you for joining me for this long intro. But we did get through one game as well of Reynor and Maru. And even, if you were tuning me out at points, or even if you weren't, you could just see in the background, it was just action and slaughter everywhere. And even with the announcers turned way down, you could still hear them, which I gotta turn it down so I can talk over it. I'll turn it up at times when it gets really exciting. But I also am going to stop games to analyze certain parts, although not too much, because these games do go long because of how epic the Maru-Reynor matchup is. So we're going to take a short break off stream. And so this is part 1 of Maru vs. Reynor. IEM Katowice 2021 Super Global World Mega Championship, which is when Reynor had already won a world championship, but this was the one because Reynor had to beat Stats, then Dark, and then Maru, and then very good Protoss player Zest to win 2021, and just because Katowice has become, in some ways, even more iconic than the ones that were at BlizzCon, because it's kind of a neutral location. I mean, I know it's in Europe, and there are a lot of good European players, including a Laser, who's a Zerg player from Poland. That must be cool to always get to play a World Championship when he makes it in front of your home audience. But it's sort of more neutral ground. And now that we know all the sketchy stuff that had been going on at Blizzard, it's better that it's just far away from the company. The community is what's kept StarCraft alive, and it's one of many reasons, and the top reason why it will be a priority to continue with improvements, fixes, adjustments, and then hopefully within the next few years, a StarCraft 3 under the guidance of Microsoft, but with the creative leads. After you fire the CEOs who do nothing but be corrupt and awful human beings, and promote the creative people to run things as it should be. People forget Blizzard was one of the first indie companies to make millions of dollars as an indie company and keep an indie culture in the games and in the corporation. So it's really sad that since Activision took over, whatever, I don't want to talk about that. Anyways, bottom line is things are already getting better there, and it's going to get way better when this deal goes through. Microsoft knows what they're doing with games, game distribution, certainly real-time strategy games. We know Phil Spencer, the CEO, and a lot of people over at Microsoft loves real-time strategy, and specifically StarCraft and Warcraft and so forth. It's in good hands, but it's the community that's kept it going, and you guys. And it's also you guys that have been keeping me going this last month and a half as I'm relaunching my brands, turning a podcast into a more multimedia presentation with much more video and doing stuff like this with esports and my favorite game, StarCraft. So thank you guys for supporting me, for watching me, for your likes and subscribes and just your views. Check me out on YouTube, and we will be back with games 2 through... Does this one go... Yeah, this one goes 5 out of 5. Maru's up 1-0 at the moment. And so we'll see if I can do games 2 through 5 between these guys from Katowice 2021 in a single cast. I might do games 2-3, take a break, and then 4-5, take a break. And then we go to their rematch, which I guess would have been about a year and a half, 15 months or so after this, in Valencia 2022, last summer, a year ago. They got to rematch in the quarterfinals of Valencia, and spoiler alert, Maru gets his revenge, but it's an even more epic competition and series of matches than this one, so that'll be super fun to do, and might end up being like one podcast or one vidcast per game because of how epic the games are and how much is going on. I mean, it's not just that it's long and fast, it's how absolutely brilliant these guys are and how the levels, there are StarCraft games, I'll talk more about this throughout the vidcast as I talk big picture stuff, because I really do need to take a break here, but there are games that go really long in StarCraft just because there are certain maps and certain matchups between players and the races and the terrain of the maps and economic factors that go on in the game that can make games go an hour or more, but those are just usually standoffs, like Old West standoffs, but where you have giant carriers in the Protoss side and giant brood lord Zergs, just they're maxed out. They can't build any more units. All the minerals are gone. All the gas is gone. They both have the big, powerful armies. And it's like the Cold War. It's like mutually assured destruction where they just look at each other for a long time. And finally someone will make a move and try and win it. But these games go long because guys like Reynor and Maru here are so brilliant and so good and artists in their own way and creative. And they're constantly trying new things in tournament in these major games. And they're improvising. I'm going to talk a lot about, while Reynor has always been unpredictable and aggressive as a Zerg player from Italy, Maru used to also be extremely aggressive Terran player who would constantly, do proxy base stuff near the opponent's base at the very beginning of the game over and over and over again and try and end games quickly with just dominating, overwhelming early game force, has now completely shifted his style into a much more defensive style where he, takes about a third of the map and then just loads it up with siege tanks and liberators and static defenses and dares the other player to beat them. And some players, when you let them have that time, like Hero, will just say, okay, I'm going to take all the rest of the resources, be way richer than you, build a way better army, and use my creativity and sneakiness to beat you. So the defensive style doesn't always work. So hopefully we see a blending hybrid of old, super aggressive Maru and newer, smarter, but also a little bit more conservative defensive Maru. And I like both versions. See a blending of that. I think if he can nail the blending of that, which it seems like he's doing, having won the last 2 major Korean titles, but if you can do it on the global stage at these live major championships outside of Korea by blending the unpredictability of young Maru with the defensive, super high IQ, super brainy, current veteran Maru. I don't want to call him old Maru. He's only 25. He's still like a kid compared to me, or in my mind. But as esports players go, he's sort of mid-career at 25 years old. But he looks so young, and the games keep these guys young, and he's so good that I don't know if he has to leave to go in the army at some point. I mean, he's sort of old enough that he probably places out, and as a national hero in Korea, they probably say, don't worry about the army. We got plenty of soldiers. Everyone else has to serve. You keep winning StarCraft titles and making us look good in our unofficial national sport, StarCraft. So Maru can play and dominate as long as he likes, and Reynor at only 20, who's already been winning since the day he turned 16 and could compete with the adults. Both of these two have been spectacular Mensa level brainiac players since they were little kids and been dominating since they were allowed into the the deep end of the pool, as it were, when they turned 16. And Reynor at age 20 is just getting started. So this is a great 5-game series, and the second series I'm going to do between these two from Valencia 2022, where Maru gets his revenge, is even more epic and awesome. I can't wait to do it. So thanks for joining me for part 1 of Maru vs. Reynor, StarCraft 2, IEM Katowice 2021 Global Final Super Major Mega Championship. These two awesome guys. And we will be back shortly with games 2 through 5. And then the follow-up rematch, Valencia 2022, right after that. So thank you guys so much. I love you all, and be back on the stream soon. Mwah.